capacity. Mr. used to a large extent. It certainly doesn't have the stimulus. Why is there after the July of Social Development's Green Paper, which was introduced in October 2021 with a National Social Security Fund and Universal Basic Income, was withdrawn 9 days after protest by pension fund managers. So it seems that that pressure is the only way to do short-term policy patching. And I would, in conclusion, say that like potholes, you can't do social security policy patching in a piecemeal fashion. So even if the Constitution and the morality of ending poverty doesn't compel us to adopt the lifeline of universal basic income, the fact that it is the only hope for a scaled economic recovery should. So we would like to see the ANC grasp as a serious commitment, a decent universal basic income, and not say that it's subject to the affordability, because the country cannot afford not to have a decent UBI. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Isabel. We're going to allow the President some time to respond, and then I'm going to start with you, Prof, at the back after.
Let me start off with Gavisi's question about the capacity in the local government space. Gavisi has written a book about the local government area, and he knows quite a lot and knows the challenges that we have in that space, and many of the things that he says are true. There is essentially a number of problems that we face there, and we have said ourselves many of the problems that we face in the local government space are political. They are given rise to by our own ANC politics, where there is contestation, where there is factionalism, where there is just not willingness to do things as well as they should. But that is precisely the problem that we are addressing on an ongoing basis, and it's part of the reform process, and there are going to be stops and starts and reversals in that area. And there's also corruption, quite rampant corruption in that area, which also is given rise to by our procurement system that gives people the opportunity to embark on corrupt activities. We are seeking to close those cases. Working together, by the way, with the Auditor General, the SIU, and one of the institutions that I want to commend is the capability that the Special Investigating Unit has been able to achieve over the past 4 years. Their progress is phenomenal. They've been able to do much more in this period than they've ever done in the past, and that needs to be recognized. They are able to investigate and identify people who have done wrong things. And so in rebuilding the capacity of government, we're focusing on local government. And you say that maybe separate parts of the party do not work in sync with what we are articulating at national level. We've taken that as our task, and in this post the 55th conference, you will find that, sir, we've got a much more effective Secretary General's office. We've got a much more hands-on National Executive Office that has members who are crisscrossing the length and the breadth of the country, interfacing and interacting with our structures, both at provincial, regional, and branch level. We are spending quite a lot of time interfacing with those where we have problems. and the visits that we are making as the NWC to various parts of our country and provinces is meaningful. Last week we were in Gauteng, and it was a joy for me to sit in the Johannesburg region and listen to easily almost 400 branch leaders within our region talking about what's happening on the ground, and also talking about some of the challenges that they have with regard to contestation at that level. And I can testify to the fact that much as we've had problems, we are repairing those problems, and we are in the rebuild mode. And I guess because renewal is a process, it will take time, and it is taking time, and in some cases it takes its toll. I mean, in other provinces we are beset with problems that result in killings and all that, and that too is a challenge that we have to face as the ANC and address. But the good thing is that we are addressing that through streamlining our rules, insisting on the adherence to our constitution, to our values. So it is a mammoth task, and the book that you wrote is quite enlightening because it sheds a light on some of the key problems. I found your book to be quite informative and very critical, which we also welcome. So you're standing here and saying what you've said is also adding to the work that we have to do. Our job is cut out. You say we sit here and we articulate, and what we say here is not being done at the local level. Quite a bit of it is being done. We've got, with the relaunch of our leagues, the provinces all having gone to conferences, and with some, regions being contested, but it's not an avalanche of dysfunctionality. It's more and more a process born out of real experience of rebuilding. So please, my dear professor, have confidence. The ANC is in rebuild mode. On the colleague from the School of Government who spoke more about foreign policy, a better Africa and a better world. We are obviously disturbed and really concerned about the number of coups that have happened within the last 2 years, with one having happened just recently after an election. And obviously the AU is seized with addressing all this. And I wouldn't say the AU is incapable. The AU has come up with a number of policy positions, rules and regulations of what needs to be done and adhered to. And so the AU plays a critical role and has made great advances in the recent past. The issue of coups is part of our policy or thrust to silence the guns. This was envisaged a few years ago. We did think that when that has not happened. So we still have a big job ahead of us to silence those guns and to make sure that those coups do not take place. And we are also having to reflect on what gives rise to these coups, because as you look at a number of countries, there are a number of underlying factors that are driving the incidence of these coups. So elections are quite messy most of the time. There is no real perfect election, I can tell you that. This is the contestation amongst candidates, amongst parties, and it often results in disputes, in doubts, and certain practices not having been fully adhered to. And it happens all over the world. I mean, even in what one can say is the so-called big democracy, not as big as India, of course, America. I mean, just look at what happened in the last election in America. Those who claim that, you know, they are the best democracy in the world. It also happens to them. So let's not really harshly judge the outcome of elections on our continent. I think the participants or the countries that go through these elections often say they listen very carefully to election observers, and they pick up a lot of lessons and a lot of experience and a lot of recommendations and advice. Similarly, that is what would be happening in the most recent election on our continent, which is Zimbabwe. Professor Parking, you are absolutely right. We have a lot of capable people in our country, and sometimes we don't open our eyes fully in the capability of many of our people. And I think you're right in saying maybe they are applauded outside of our country than they are. And that's what also is said in the Bible, that prophets are often recognized outside of their countries rather than in their own countries. But we must admit that many people in our country are capable, are well trained, and they need to be applauded and celebrated. Now, you say that we've only built 2 universities. Yes, in say 30 years. We've got 2 universities that are going to be built soon. And I was actually quite impressed to see that, you know, there will be a university in Hammanskraal soon, a place that we may never have thought. You are right, we need to build more and more universities. Being a 60-something million people country, we need to have more institutions of learning. But we should also recognize that the achievements that we have wrought in higher education, the student body in our country would be about 1.3, 1.4 million today, and 750,000 of those are being fully funded by the government. And Minister of Higher Education was telling me that we now spend 48 billion rand in funding students in higher education. You do not find that in any other country on the continent, in South Africa. And I think that's something we need to be proud about. And we are building more TVET colleges. The tendency has always been get children to go to university and so on. We are now focusing more on saying let's build more colleges, TVET colleges, so that we can increase the cohort of more well-qualified students. Professor Tidiambe, you spoke about the quality of education. Yes, and all of us will testify to the fact that the quality of our education needs to improve exponentially. And sometimes we are measured on these surveys that we get involved in, like the PILS survey, which found that we come, almost near to the bottom, where our children are said not to be able to read for meaning and understanding. And I read an article written by a professor the other day who said, we judge ourselves too harshly because that survey is actually, there are more sort of economically developed countries participate in that survey and less countries from the African continent who participate. But that does not mean that we should not improve the quality of our education, which we are working on. And seeing and understanding that the biggest damage that was done by apartheid was in education. Improving education is going to be a generational issue. It is definitely not going to happen overnight. because even those who are teaching in our school system were damaged by apartheid education themselves. And so therefore we are doing remedial work. And we will arrive at a point where we really have great and effective teachers in time. And we already see the signs of it. The 800,000 young people that we brought into schools as assistants are at another level. Their IT proficiency was found by the existing teachers in the various schools, 23,000 schools, as being of a great contribution. So it means that the wheel is turning, and obviously because it is such a damaged wheel, it'll take time to turn, but we should never lose hope. Isabel, you will testify to the fact that we are working together in an integrated way, non-governmental organizations and government, to look at how the basic income grant can be put in place, that we should have comprehensive social security. Yes, we've got almost 12 million people who do not have jobs, and you obviously concede that we will never be able to create jobs for all those people. So therefore there is a need, as it is what inspired us to opt for the 350 grant, because as COVID's impact was proving to be more and more negative, we concluded that we needed to do something for those who are unemployed and who are poor. That's why the 350 grant was then introduced. You are right, it is too small, and what it does, it manages poverty, and we need to have a grant that is going to be able to lift more and more of our people out of poverty. You say that our macroeconomic architecture needs to change. That is a matter that obviously needs to be fully and thoroughly discussed. And you argue that, yes, it is affordable. Government has to deal with so many asks or needs. The other day, I asked the minister to tell me, Minister of Finance, to tell me, how much are we spending on the indigent funding for poor families for electricity and water? And he gave me a number that I never thought we had. I thought we would spend 4 billion. We spend more than that number, which runs into many, many billions, in supporting our people, in alleviating the bad situation that they are living under. So Isabel, the discussions is ongoing, and even as we move forward to the next budget, it is a matter that we are going to be looking at very closely, and obviously aided and abetted by yourselves in the NGO sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We're going to move to closing. Prof. Lenkabula, where's the prof that I had promised? And then one are these academic, not media questions, academic questions. Okay, we are taking 2 and then we're closing. Yes. Oh, did they take the mic away? Sorry. Okay, there it is. It keeps moving, that one. Could I ask you to come to the middle, please?
This thing is coming off. Okay.
Oh, okay. Is it okay?
Good afternoon, President and colleagues.
Yeah. This is a real roving mic.
No, I can't.
And now she can't be seen.
I can't see her when she's there.
Okay.
But
I'm from the University of South Africa, your alma mater, President.
Yes.
This is the university that has produced multiple professionals in this country, and it requires a place in the history of the African National Congress as it does of the global arena. I believe at this point, the questions that I want to raise are quite important. I feel our engagements today have focused mostly on the fault lines of what has not been accomplished, to the extent that has forgotten the emancipatory project that the African National Congress of the country would have been pivotal in projecting, historicizing the shifting of the democratic dispensation and the opportunities that would have been gained from that. And this is a deficiency that we Africans often project. We project the ugliness of our history and not necessarily the progressive and enabling. So our young and youth and young adults cannot use ideas, metaphors, systems, and processes that are constructive. Instead, they see Africa's knowledge systems, Africa's institutions, including the ANC, and Africa's ideation not progressive. And I would like to make an appeal that we must go back and look at what is it that we have accomplished for the country, the continent, and the world, and how then do we package it into the future. The second question that I wanted to state, the higher education system only caters for 1.2 million. 33 to 37% of those are at University of South Africa. The challenges of successes of universities, President, are the fact that we are not investing in the digitization systems that enable multiplicities of participation of students in the educational arena. And this is an area that we need to strengthen because it creates a challenge. Mamokgethi, Professor Pakeng raised the issue of not optimizing the youthful dividend. I think this is true because we are creating a binary of TVET colleges and university systems instead of looking at an integrated approach. Finally, I feel we're not investing in the innovation cycle of our university system. This country invested in a car, EV car, way before the Asian countries, the European countries would have invested in it. Joule. It only needed 9 billion for commercialization to becoming a global competitive edge for our country. There are multiple examples that we can raise, but I just wanted to use the EV car because now that we're talking about new energy systems, sustainability and whatever, we forget that the Joule car that was developed by the university systems here was just allowed to be showcased in Geneva and elsewhere and not invested into becoming an economically competitive resource from our country into the global arena. We need to do that. Marine sciences, aerodynamics, biotechnologies, these are important competitive matters that we need to be protecting because the natural resources of the country, the biotic resources of the country, the planetary resources of the country cannot be optimized for economic benefit if these investments are not made. And I'd like for us to rethink. It is one thing to talk about how many students we support to access higher education, President. It's another for them to ensuring that their talents are optimized for transforming our country. And that's an appeal I'd like to make to you and the ANC. And I'm hoping that those investments will be looked into strongly. We're not going to buy curtains with them, President.
Thank you very much, Prof. David.
What did she say?
We're not going to buy curtains with the money that.
Oh, eat you.
My name is David Mainela, and I come from myself. It was not a caucus between me and her, but we just happened to raise our hands at the end. Just want to put that up front. I think there are one or two affirmative or affirmations that I want to make for the government of the day and the ANC in particular. I think the first one that we have to agree on, like emphatically, is the fact that since 1994, South Africa is indeed a better place than it was before 1994. I think we need to say that.
I did say that.
I'm saying that us from the audience as well.
Indeed.
Then the second affirmation that I think we need to make is that, in my view, I think millions of Africans and black Africans see the ANC as the only thing that they truly own. And I think this is very important from a historical and an identity point of view. So I think that type of understanding requires that the ANC probably looks at what I refer to as the basics. The basics for me would be for the ANC to consider, to ask itself the question, from the beginning when the political movement started, it sought to resolve what was then called the South African problem.
David, is this a lecture?
Yeah, no, it's not. I'm going to be brief, actually. It was formed to resolve the South African problem. And Africans had to unite and form a movement in order for it to deal with the South African problem. And vice versa, the fact that the ANC was formed to deal with it. Today, I don't seem to hear President, because the entire session was too practical for my liking. I don't seem to hear us asking the basic and fundamental question. 30 years on, what is the basic South African problem? And how can we resolve it? Because I think this is what should define the philosophy, the ideology, the strategy, the policy, and the actions of the African National Congress. So I'm saying that this is a homework, I think, for all of us. Quickly coming to the practical side of things, I think it was Professor Mkandawire, the late, who said that the state in Africa, because of the legacy of colonialism, is always constrained and limited to deal with the provision, the management and the provision of basic services, and does not deal with the fundamental question on how to deal with the transformation of the economy. Because if you deal with the transformation of the economy, you are going to unleash the catalytic forces that will actually deal with the social and the basic problems. So that's what many people actually want. Whether you look at Europe or America, basically that's or whether you look at Asia, that becomes that. So for me, if you were to prioritize, Mr. President, it's the economy, it's infrastructure, education, and health. Thank you, but you must define what the South African problem is.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bringing us back to the big ideas. It's important. Last comment, and then we're closing.
Okay. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, Mr. President and colleagues. My name is Professor Sylvester Mpandeli. I work at Water Research Commission. 3 suggestions. One, you spoke about those 7 pillars of ANC manifestos. Is those 7 pillars are not talking to each other, we'll continue having problems because we will be taking a linear approach We need to harmonize them, create trade-offs and so on. That's my first comment. Second comment or suggestion, Mr. President, you spoke about the government feeding scheme. And I can bet we've got various knowledge generations in this country like Water Research Commission, ARC, and so on. If you can encourage government departments, especially departments of basic education, to adopt this principle to say one school, one garden. One school, one garden. Which means that that principle is going to complement the government feeding scheme. This is very, very important in order not to constrain the fiscal system. And this is something that is being done in Europe, South America, and so on. My last comment is linked to the first comment with regards to various multi-stresses that we are facing, including climate change, population growth, and so on. We need to drive our activities in an integrated or in an exhaust way. For example, agriculture, energy, biodiversity, all these sectors need to talk to one another. And we've got technologies that can address socio-economic challenges that we are facing in the country, including technologies that have been developed within the water and agriculture sectors. Those are my three suggestions or comments, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Always good to end on a scientific note, ending with the scientist. Mr. President, your responses.
Thank you very much. Maybe let me start off with what Professor Abula was saying. We often, and that is so true, and this is so common in the media and in many commentators, we always look at the ugliness of the present and we are very critical, and that in many ways blinds us to the good that is being done, because it does not mean that good is not being done and efforts are not being made. And in making all these efforts, obviously there'll be stops and starts, there'll be backward steps and there'll be failures, but I often say that all we need to focus on is a forward trajectory, moving forward. And I go back to Nelson Mandela's quote in his book that we've reached the summit of a hill. And as we look at the vista of what we've achieved, we find that there are many more hills to climb. And just the imagery of that means that we have to go down that hill. And that means we go into a dip. And it becomes more difficult to go up another hill. And we reach another hill, we've achieved something, and then there are things that will be obstacles, that will be difficulties that take us back. So as long as there is forward movement, and I would say that what we have had in our country, with all the challenges that we have, there's been forward movement. We've sought in everything that we have done to advance the interests of our people. And that I want it to be priority or top of mind to all of us. So the glass is not half full, half empty rather. The glass is half full and more than half full, in fact. And I appreciate what Professor Bula says, that we need to also applaud and upgrade African ideation. We must be proud of our African heritage, our ideas, and there is a new resurgence on our continent for a great movement of, and maybe we're not calling it renaissance, of instilling pride in ourselves as Africans in terms of what we are able to achieve, that we are no longer willing to be subjected to, Western notions, Western domination and all that. We are Africans and we must be proud of that, and we must be proud of the fact that we do have ideas and we have really, really good people amongst us. And I also appreciate what she says about having 1.2 million students. I said 1.3 or so. It is 1.2, and 33% of them are in a distant learning university, my alma mater, like UNISA. But what we have achieved in that regard is, and many people may not even be aware of it, universities such as University of Johannesburg, which used to be called Rand Afrikaans University, Pretoria University, Wits, UCT, Rhodes, the majority of students there were just white. And today the majority of students who go to those universities are people like you and I. And that is great progress. And the government is in the trenches supporting them. And I agree that we need to focus and invest in digitization so that they can excel in a number of ways. And we need to optimize on the youthful dividend. And I think we are doing that. And we need to do more. She mentions a project that government was involved in, the Jewel project of electric vehicles. And I agree with you, Professor, if we had gone ahead with it, we would have been ahead of the curve. The world is now waking up to electric vehicles. We would have been far ahead. And I think when it was looked at and that economically it wasn't ticking all the boxes, it was then abandoned. And yet we should have focused on taking the lead and incentivizing the private sector to also come and be part of it. So I agree with you, Professor. There are certain things that government needs to take a deep breath and take a lead in, but work with the private sector. Professor Mariana Mazzucato talks about it a lot in her book, that it is government that must take the lead, and on establishing the internet, it was the government of the US that took the lead, and it was then taken forward, and it was the government of the US that said we are going to the moon, and then they got involved in that moon project, but they had a number of private sector participants as well. I'm glad to have listened to my young brother here when he spoke about affirming what has been done in the country, and saying that yes, the country is far different from what it used to be. And for him to say that many people see the ANC as what they truly own, it belongs to them, and that is so true. This is what we are finding amongst many of our people, and we need to define exactly what the ANC's mission is. What is the problem that the ANC sought to resolve when it was founded 111 years ago? It took the ANC 82 years to achieve its goal of bringing an end to an apartheid system. But we also knew that that was just a breakthrough. There are many other things that needed to be done going forward. In the end, what we are seeking to do, which was crafted by our forebears, was to ensure that there is democracy in South Africa, which by and large has been established, has been achieved, that we have a non-racial democracy. By and large it has. There are still remnants of racist practices, which in time we will also get rid of, and that South Africa embraces non-sexism. That is still a struggle that still needs to be won, but the governing party has fully embraced the issue of non-sexism, equality between men and women, and I'm proud as president of the ANC to say all our structures have full equality of men and women. It is a real joy for me as I travel overseas, going to other countries, and I have in my delegation equal representation of men and women. And I look at other delegations, it isn't so. And I say we can be proud of what we have achieved in South Africa as this government. And that deserves a round of applause. In my brother who spoke last, to say that we need to focus on the 7 priorities, but make sure that they talk to each other. So that it's just not a linear process of implementation. And I agree with that. And we must use technologies to drive development as we move on. And maybe we don't use enough technologies. And maybe we're not empowering our young people who are techno-savvy more than us. We need to be relying more and more on them to lead us on the way of technology. And we always see it, that young people are more au fait, and we need to unleash them and free them to drive the technological development of our country. Having said that, thank you very much, and I've enjoyed this. I think it's a good idea to have you as the moderator.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for the frank and open discussion I think that we have today. Thank comment, may it be brief, please. And we really are hoping for an open discussion, an open conversation here leading up to the events that will then take place tomorrow in Dobsonville. So without further ado, I would like to invite the ANC Secretary General to come and set the tone for us.
Thank you very much, Program Director, the President of the African National Congress, Comrade Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, the officials of the ANC, Deputy President, Comrade Paul Mashatile, the National Chair of the ANC, Comrade Brendan Mantashe, the Treasurer General of the ANC, Comrade Gwen Ramakgopa, all members of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. You know me too very well, I defeated him. But he's a very, very special kind of a person and a jewel of the African National Congress. A great comrade indeed. You like to compare me with him from time to time, but so we are solid like that. But I want to thank everyone from our team at Lutuli House and the media. And I also want to thank another woman, very special, our Treasurer General. All these things will not be possible without her. Thank you very much, TG, for the support you are giving to us. But also thank opinion makers. I want to thank you because we don't debate in the country anymore. We insult each other on Twitter, especially around 12 o'clock midnight. And then we trend and we end like that. The open engagement the media is asking the media is asking all the time, and we promised to give you, we have the officials here, Comrade Deputy President, if you still want to follow up on what the President said with one of them, you are free to do so. Happy. There is another one, happy people are coming. So I want to thank everyone. And everyone who have contributed and who have taken their time to come here to engage with us. To us, this is the beginning. It's not the end. We know we're going to be criticized, and there are people who said we did nothing. So there is an interrelation between this process of 5 years and 30 years. It doesn't just end with 5 years. We kickstart the process of 5 years. But from here, we are going to 8 provinces from Gauteng. I don't know whether Panyaza will fill up the stadium tomorrow. But if it is not full, you must know that this Panya thing doesn't work. From there, we move to 8 provinces. From 8 provinces, we'll move to 53 regions in the country. From 53 regions, we'll move to 22,500 VDs on the ground in taking the message forward. So that's what we're going to do. So we thank you very much, and Mahlengi will announce to the media people what's going to happen from now and tomorrow. But thank you very much. Unomvula akafuni uphatha. Ucela uphatha but uphethwe ndim. Kuba Mahlengi.
Thank you very much, SG. I'm not doing any vote of thanks. The SG has done that perfectly. I just do wish, though, to single out our splendid moderator. Splendid. I think you must start building the ANC and any other political party after that. But one of our volunteers in chief, and I'm side-eyeing the TG as I say this, but thank you, SG, thank you, DSG, our national officials for making the time, members of our National Executive Committee and Provincial Executive Committee led by Comrade Banyaza Nasispan and the PEC Gauteng from all other provinces, but more especially the guests of the day who did not disappoint. Members of the academia, analysts, researchers and other scholars, members of the media. We just have an army of editors. I haven't seen editors in a long time, President, like this, including Monty Makanya. It's not me who says so. I'm not outing you, Monty. And a number of committed patriots and South Africans who are interested in engaging the African National Congress about its 2019 manifesto and the work going forward. It's a case of looking back in order to look ahead. So having said that, members of the media, accreditation is available. I am aware that we've already started accrediting. SG, we're moving on a very clean page. We've already done the accreditation. Those that have not been accredited can obtain the accreditation tests at this venue so that we don't have any challenges tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we are in Dobsonville. There will be our alliance partners and many others that will be participating. But more importantly, the address by the President will take place somewhere between 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock. I hope I'm correct, President. And so that is how the running order is going to be. Our structures in Gauteng have done a lot of work by way of mobilization, so we are confident we're going to fill up Dobsonville. We invite members of the media to come in the numbers that you've done and more to join us as our clients as we then communicate our message here. SG, I hope I covered everything that needed to be covered. Other than that, there's light lunch that's being served. Let's mingle, let's engage, let's converse. Thank you very much.
Lovely Mahlengi, I invite you to lunch. Thank you very much. Present here, the chairperson of the ANC in Gauteng, Comrade Panyaza, Panya, Nasi Spani, Lisufi, and the Secretary of the Province, Comrade TK Ngeza. Let me begin by thanking all of you, members of the media, who are here with us to come and engage in a talk and engagement with the ANC in what is really something new that we are doing to report back about what we have done in the past 5 years. This is a preview for what the President will deliver on behalf of the National Executive Committee tomorrow. So today we are engaging with you, with our President, leading that dialogue in terms of engagement. So we are not launching a manifesto. We are starting a process of report back and so on about what we have done and what we continue to do as the ANC for the country. And that is what we are going to do through the President of the African National Congress. I want to thank all of you who have responded to this invitation by the ANC this morning. So I don't want to waste any time. I just want to say to all of you, you are all welcomed and feel free to engage. Mzwandi Lembeja, I can see you are really, really ready for the occasion. So our president is here. He will listen and engage with you, and he will make a presentation in terms of the preview, and from there you will engage like the program director have said, the moderator. So, but thank you very much. I also want to welcome our first DSG, Comrade Nomvula Mukonyani. As you can see, we are all here. Comrade, the second DSG is not here because of personal engagements, participelele. So after the president, media people, just confine yourself to what we are here for. You will accuse me like Gwamanda. Yeah. But after the president, after we close, we've got ministers here. I know you like Sputa. He's here. And Mutswaledi. And Umam Kosazana is here. And the defense is here. Ayman Asishot is Pelen and the chief whip. So you are free to engage with us and the officials to probe further some of the issues you will then engage the president about. But thank you, President, and the officials and everyone else. Thank you. You are welcome.
SG, and as he said, this is a report back, a moment for the ANC to really engage with members of the media fraternity as well as the academic community on the progress that has been made in the last 5 years. And so with that, I would like to invite the President of the ANC to come and make some opening remarks.
So how do you want it to be? Seated?
You are welcome to sit, please. Yes, please. We are having a conversation. Yes, we are.
Thank you very much, and let me extend my greetings to the Deputy President, the National Chairperson, the SG, the first DSG of the ANC, and the National Treasurer of the African National Congress, and also members of the NEC, the leadership of our province here in Gauteng, as led by Comrade Banyaza Lessufi, and a whole lot of other people who are in leadership positions in the alliance, and the media, and people in academia and others. This is a welcome opportunity, and I'd like to thank the SG as well as Comrade Mahlengi for organizing an opportunity like this. This is being billed as a pre-setter, if you like, for tomorrow's rally that we are going to have in Soweto, where we will be presenting a review of the implementation of our 2019 Manifesto. So we want to thank you for being part of this occasion. Now, since the first democratic elections in 1994, the ANC has sought to develop its manifesto through thoroughgoing consultations across society, and has never seen that process as being a mere ANC process. It has engaged all of society, and it has done so through various forums. From the first People's Forum, where South Africans from across the country and across the social spectrum were able to articulate their concerns as well as their wishes, the ANC has always sought to involve our people in putting forward views. In doing so, the ANC has drawn on the tradition of consultation and engagement that it has learned over the years throughout history, and especially in 1955, when the Congress of the People got together in Cape Town here in Gauteng to draft the iconic document, which is the Freedom Charter. That process took a number of months to arrive at, so we've learned from that. We also remember the extensive consultation that we went through as South Africans as we drafted our constitution. So this engagement today is part of that tradition. However, it is slightly different because it is new. We are traversing new ground ourselves to have a pre-review type of process where we consult and engage with a number of people such as yourselves from all walks of life to reflect on the implementation. And as our moderator has said, and including the SG, to have an honest discussion, an open discussion about what we have done and what we have not been able to do. And through this, we are hoping that we will be able to contribute a number of ideas that will also help in shaping and forming the 2024 election manifesto. We also know that not everyone who's here is a member of the ANC, and we welcome that. We welcome views that do not only emanate from the African National Congress members or even supporters. We also welcome the views of those who are